Hello, and welcome again to another edition right here on MediaNet TV of What a Week with myself, Mr. C, comedian, and also my co-host as well, Mr. Tony Crossbody, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. C. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Big up yourself, Tony. How you feeling, my bro?
Yeah, man. Feeling good for action-packed show. Got some interesting stories we're going to talk about.
100%.
So, looking forward to getting into it.
Good, man. And listen, and good evening to everybody who's watching, no matter whether you're near or far, whether you're watching on your mobile phone or on a big TV screen. Good evening to you. So listen, we need you to kind of get involved with the show. So please remember to like, subscribe, and to share to all your friends, family, and even your frenemies them as well, because we've got a few of those around, haven't we? Hey.
So good evening to Angela. Good evening, Angela.
Big up yourself, Ange. What's happening? Yeah, man, we want your comments. We want your comments. We want your thoughts. We want your views on everything nice and newsy. So, Tony, what's been happening for you for this week? What have you been up to?
Oh, well, bro, I've been just doing a lot of writing, working on some, a book, but it's taking some time, obviously, so.
Is this a world exclusive? A book? A book?
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea came through some listeners, basically, who said, get something done. Probably just a sort of like a 30,000-foot view of the history.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad that our listeners are encouraging you to do that, Tony, because, God forbid, I feel if anything should happen to you, we would have lost like the black version of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
You're too kind, bro.
Yeah. So it's important, and that goes for everybody who's got a skill, or even some of our elderly ones. Let's capture all of the knowledge, write it in a book, or even a little video series. So Tony, what is your book going to be about?
Well, it's going to be about the history that we've been discussing for the last few weeks, and just highlighting this whole thing about where black people really come from and the reason why we find ourselves in this situation. But like I said, it's going to be sort of a simplified version, and then what I'm planning to do is probably do some more which go into greater detail. So it's probably going to end up being a series of books.
No. Well, you know what? We'll look out for that. Of course, you're going to give us the exclusive first and foremost.
Of course.
Well, there you go. Good evening, Denise Francis. Also, Sharon Spice Gibson. Good evening. Welcome to What a Week. We start things off with, this one. BBC continues in their support of all things bright and black and beautiful with a special episode of The Vicar of Dibley. But it caused a little bit of controversy. These were the headlines. So here we go. The Vicar of Dibley takes a knee. Dawn French will deliver a sermon about Black Lives Matter when the BBC comedy returns for Christmas. And it's kicked up a fuss. Tony, share with us your thoughts as regards to when you saw this headline.
Well, I mean, I just knew it's going to be the loose women all over again scenario, isn't it? I think people don't understand the program this year. In view of all that's happened, there's been more features of black issues on TV, but it's still very hard for the population to digest.
True. I mean, I can't see what all the fuss is about, really and truly. I mean, usually in church, people take two knees, don't they? So if she's down on one knee, what's the problem? What's the fuss? And I think, again, it shows that the program is current and dealing with what's happening within the world. I don't see a problem with that at all. So, I think big up to Dawn French, to be honest with you.
But then again, you got to, from a point of view, this particular show particularly appeals to Middle England, right? So
yes.
Not people in the cities, but more people who live in the countryside and, they're used to that sort of peaceful way of life. And I guess they don't want their shows being politicized, and they certainly don't want it politicized with black issues. So you've got two problems for them. as to why they would find this very difficult to absorb.
I suppose if it was dealing with things which is more in tune for their liking, like immigration and stopping them from coming over here, mate, then they'd be more akin to that. But yeah, black. I suppose again, I can.
To be fair though, I think if the show was something to do with, you know, their livestock dying off and the government not giving them money to be able to have their life in the countryside, you know, they would that would be more pertinent to them. To be fair,
yeah.
But yeah, as opposed to, you know, something that is pretty much going on mainly in the cities doesn't really have. I mean, in those country areas in Middle England, there's hardly any black people out there, so their feeling could be, well, why have we got to? Why is our show got to be politicized in this manner?
But then again, it's about saying that, you know, even yourselves in the rural areas, such as Croydon or Croydon or Ilford, these rural areas, that you know, you two should have a say and an input as regards to the, you know, things and topics that do affect lots of people's daily lives. So yeah, I think it's a good inclusion, me personally. However, I can see their point. If we have anybody from the lovely town of Dibley, please feel free to join in. I know that we've got one or two who like to watch. You want to say big up to Tarquin in Taunton. And
I mean, I think there's sometimes where we're concerned, we kind of probably wrongly assume sometimes that if people don't like something to do with, you know, our issues or our community necessarily, that it's a racist thing. But we have to be fair sometimes and understand that some people just see that this just doesn't apply to me, and you know, you can put out other shows where it applies to the populace, but this is our little country show, this is our little church thing, this is the little community in which we live, and we don't have these problems around here because those people aren't around here. So you know, that can be, you know, that can sort of, it's almost like they might feel this has been rammed down their throats when they feel that this has nothing to do with them.
Glow says those complaining have nothing to do. They're pathetic. It's sad. They can change the channel if they don't like what they see. I suppose, but again, if it's a program that you love, Glow, then you know, it feels, you feel like you're being forced to miss out on what you really enjoy. And yeah, I suppose you've got a real good point there, Tony, because you know, just because somebody doesn't like a particular item on a program doesn't mean that they're anti-black.
Anti-black or they're racist. Yeah. I mean, that show there is like Last of the Summer Wine, or Open All Hours. You know, those sort of genteel shows more for sort of like senior citizens, very slow-paced country sort of thing, and then all of a sudden you put in this big political element in there, which doesn't even occur to a lot of these people. So, you know, they probably feel that they're being infringed. Their little show that they have, they say, well, look, it's everywhere else, but why has it got to be in my show? And that's probably the way they're taking it on.
Yeah. I mean, Glow adds in again, the majority of programs on the television had nothing to do with us. And it's true, but it's not our country. Or is it? But anyway, it seems like that wasn't the only thing that certain people who didn't like about the Black Lives Matter movement. As we all know, for this season's Premiership football matches, all teams are required to take the knee before the game, just to show again that Black lives do matters. However, as this week we saw fans now coming back into the stadium for the first time, and a particular stadium in London, in a notorious area, Millwall Football Club, the Den, they had a different kind of response. They were booing as the players decided to take the knee, in their how can I put it, in defiance of the Black Lives Matter movement, and them thinking that, you know what, we've had enough of this, mate. Stop it. These were the headlines. So here we go. from the Daily Mail, it says, none of us know if it was a racist reaction, but Black Lives Matter as a brand causes confusion. Simon Jordan says it's too easily to vilify Millwall fans for booing their players for taking a knee. Well, Tony, were the booers racist, or were they just, again, just voicing an opinion?
Well, I think this is slightly different to the Vicar of Dibley. Because football is an arena where you have black players. Last week we were discussing this whole thing about Anton Ferdinand and John Terry, weren't we? And we know that racism is prevalent in football. So this is very pertinent, and the fact that they knew what it was and they boo. And we know that Millwall really has a reputation. They're not exactly the most black-friendly club in the country. So yes, I think you can view this with a lot more suspicion than you can at the Vicar of Dibley.
Well, listen, Simon Jordan is saying that you know, he actually sides with some of the fans, and he's decided that he's going to stand up at Millwall's clash against Derby. He's not going to be taking the knee. Also, we saw protests outside Millwall Football Club with the far right activist group, Britain First. They did a little kind of video clip stating their reasons why they feel that, you know, there shouldn't be any Black Lives Matter kneeling going on. Some of the reasons they cited were that it's portraying white people to be subservient to black people. Also, that Black Lives Matter is an anti-fascist, or whatever he said, organization. They're against the family. Now, there was one or two points what he made which I think were absolutely accurate. However, it seems like this can only gather more support to extreme groups like Britain First. What do you think about that, Tony? Do you think more people are going to join this racist organization now because of it? Because we're rubbing it in their faces?
You see, I don't know what kneeling is going to accomplish. I mean, if Black Lives Matter were going and say, well, look, we want to put some type of committee together to pursue reparations, for example, right? Which is something that's sort of top of the agenda for black people. I could understand that, but you know, forcing people to go into a ceremony of kneeling, I think what that does, it's just gonna upset people of this country more and more. I think you're gonna get a situation where, okay, they were sympathetic to the George Floyd situation, they're still getting to understand it now, but it's gonna get to a point where, from their perspective, they're gonna see it as being too much, and I think it's gonna give these far right groups more ammunition than they really need.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially because one of the things what he mentioned was he mentioned George Floyd and the fact that he was a convicted felon. He committed a few crimes or whatever, but again, it does give the kind of impression that we're celebrating some kind of, you know, black man who was a criminal. And again, it does make it easy for people to kind of like, well, you know what, he's got a point there, mate. You know, then obviously he brings up the likes of the guy who got murdered in Woolwich, the soldier Lee Rigsby, and various other little misdirections. However, I can see that it will gain traction, to be honest with you, and the fact that again there's this confusion as regards to Black Lives Matter, the campaign, and Black Lives Matter, the organization in America.
Right.
I think,
right. So, and I'm hoping in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail, so we can actually see what's really.
Please do, because I've been meaning to cover this for a long time. Yeah. I think we need to.
It is a historical moment with their arrival, and it needs to be discussed in the context of history and what it means, and I'm going to talk about that, and so we can all see what the whole movement is about. But the actual slogan and its meaning, obviously, is very important and very pertinent.
Yeah.
But the problem is how you go about how you go about your cause and forcing people or making them feel, guilting them into doing ceremonies which are pretty much meaningless. Really, I mean, kneeling on the ground. I mean, come on. I mean, even black people are not kneeling on the ground, and you know what I mean. So, my thing is that making people feel that they have to do this only increases the animosity. And someone just pointed out, I think it was Angela. Yeah, Angela says that this is the whole Brexit movement in full motion now. It's you know, you're switching back, and it's funny that, you know, the Brexit issue, you know, is now up in the news, right? Because obviously, if the government don't cut a deal by the end of the month, you know, we're gonna suffer the consequences because of that. So you've got that issue, and then you've got this on top of it. So yeah, I'm not sure if forcing players to kneel and all that is really the right way forward for our cause.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It really is, because, you know, I mean, even Saturday's game, I think to myself, like, you know, they've only got a certain amount of fans in the stadium. Those that are booing, turn the cameras on them, identify them, ban them. It's not difficult. And that will send a clear message to all football grounds that we're not going to tolerate you booing. Yeah? We're not going to tolerate you booing. It's either, you know, when the national anthem is playing, if you sing, if you want to join in, or you don't. If you feel like, nah, this song's not for me. However, if you boo when the national anthem is playing, then that's a little bit extreme, isn't it? So I think, yeah. I think that there's stuff that the FA can do to kind of like to stamp this out immediately, to be honest with you. But again, as I think it was Angela was saying, that this is standard for Millwall. Millwall has a history of racial hatred. And again, the club needs support from the FA if they're gonna really tackle with this in a very, very effective way.
But Mr. C, do we need to do the kneeling? I mean, look, you got signs all over the stadium saying Black Lives Matter. The players are wearing shirts saying Black Lives Matter, right? Do we actually need to make players kneel? I mean, I'm not sure that we need to. We can fight this cause without necessarily doing that.
You know what? I think again, this is typical of sometimes organisations having a knee-jerk reaction to a particular situation. I think at the time it seemed like a good idea, but and that's because there was nobody in the stadiums, to be honest with you. Yeah. And again, at the time, it probably felt right for the players to do that. Especially with, you know, when you've seen how people like Colin Kaepernick was treated in America. So it probably felt like a good idea. However, as the season is progressing now, one or two players may feel a little bit tired of it now. It feels a little bit of lip service. Do they really need to kneel? Possibly not, I'd thought. But I mean, again, I think that the FA needs to step up now from the kneeling. That's what they need to do. They need to stand up from the kneeling and actually stand forward.
More efforts to kick racism out of football. You know, showing the progress that is making. You know, I mean, symbolic gestures like that and making players feel that you've got to do it. You know, or if the crowd or the audience don't like it, right? Then you know, we're going to be up in arms about. But true, who sanctioned this? Black people never sanctioned this. Well, I'd rather the FA put efforts in stamping out racism and following what was going on in America and kneeling.
Well, this is the same thing like somebody in the post office deciding one bright morning that they're going to paint certain post boxes black. Like, you know, when I walked past a post box that was black, it uplifted me from all the racism that I've ever encountered. I actually felt like, you know what? I feel equal to Whitey today, and what? It's a black post box. Black. No, it didn't have that effect on me. When I went to my local Caribbean restaurant, did I get discount on my curry chicken, rice and peas? No. It had no impact on my life.
In real terms, these things are just like token symbolism, right? Do you know what I mean? I mean, okay. I mean, pulling down statues seems significant, but But what we need is black people in the higher echelons of power. You just handing out breadcrumbs, but still keeping the main meal for yourself. I mean, you know, those are things. I mean, we shouldn't really be quibbling over. What we want is basically to be in a position where we can make decisions for our own people. That, you know, kneeling and stuff like that really does nothing for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. But I think, you know what, to be honest with you, I've got mixed views on it, Tony, when I seriously think about it, because I think that, you know, football is probably the world's biggest sport. And I think that by showing the players kneeling, it sends out a big, how can I put it? It sends out a big shout to the rest of the world and the rest of other sports who always try to separate, how can I put it, views of political persuasions from actual sport itself. Hence, as I said, Colin Kaepernick, for example, the way how he was treated when he took the knee. Again, I think like this is a way of the Football Association saying to other sports, you know, you should allow the players to be able to express their feelings and and how they feel as regards to certain political things. But it's a difficult one. We need to see more. We need to see the FA do more, especially after what we saw what happened with Anton Ferdinand. Yes, they're moving in the right direction, but we need to see more of it, and we need to see it happen at a higher level. Again, listen, I'm sure I saw one comment here which was, it just threw me. It was from Karen James, who said, "Good evening, Tony. Happy belated birthday."
Yes.
Is there something you never tell us, Tony?
Well, I was just keeping it secret, you know.
Happy birthday, bruv! Come on. How many is that now?
Well, I think me and you are probably neck and neck right now, you know.
Okay, that's good. 36. That's good. Shut it, you lot. Shut it. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Get up off the floor. Well, we're blessed that you're blessed with another year's worth of life, Tony, man. Give thanks. Give thanks.
Thanks, bro.
Donna Ben says, Donna Ben says, "Greetings, Mr. C and Mr. Crossbody. Why not? I think it should carry on as I'm petty and it makes folks awkward. But yes, more should be done now also." Yeah. And I think, you know, it's good that people feel a bit awkward. They need to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Carolyn says that the players do it if they want to do it, force it, and that's fine. All I'm saying is, look, if you're gonna annoy people, right? If you're gonna annoy the status quo, do it for big things that we want, big things that we need to have, right? Change some of that legislation. Let's talk about reparations, right? Get everybody upset about that. Don't let them making big thing about a knee. Do you mean?
Yeah. Karen's saying that you didn't want to share your cake, Tony. Is this true? You have cake, and I want to share it, Tony.
I got a slice for Karen, man.
Oh, steady. It's a family show.
What did I just say there?
Oh dear. However, you know, there are some companies who are, as we said, that the supermarkets, man, the supermarkets are doing some wonderful things in this month. Asda have now decided that children under the age of 16 can eat for free. Oh!
Wow.
Come on, Asda.
I wonder how much Marcus Rashford had to do with that.
You know what? Possibly. I think that's a knock-on effect of somebody like Marcus Rashford doing that. But again, I've got to say, you know, Asda, we salute you. All 216 of their stores will be doing this. So again, any children under the age of 16, as long as they're accompanied with an adult, can eat for free in Asda. And it says there's no restrictions on the number of children. So again, if you're a man who's got like 27 children out there, you can gather them all together and go and yam out the whole of Asda. It's absolutely fantastic. No, you know, me personally, Tony, I think that is a wonderful gesture. And just imagine if another 2 or 3 supermarkets did that as well. that a lot of children who who come home from school and don't know where their next meal is, can get a little something to fill that gap in their belly, man. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Carolyn says, my 6-foot son is 15. I wonder if they'll let him come and yam down the place.
Well, bring his ID, and shave him before you take him there, Carolyn.
I'm here for some food.
Get out.
Get out of here.
And take your husband with you. Take your wife with you, I should say. Oh, man. Oh yes, Angela's made a good point. The two Asian gentlemen have taken over Asda, so I've heard. I haven't got any other news on that. Do you know anything about this, Tony?
No.
I did hear about that, but again, I haven't looked into it. So thank you very much, Angela.
Our producer says next year that looks like it's going to happen.
Oh, it's next year, yeah. Oh, well, listen, we'll watch that. We'll watch out for that. But again, that is interesting because Asda is like, oh my God, that's part of the British Foundation. So the fact that two Asian brothers or gentlemen have actually bought that, that is interesting. That is interesting. It would be interesting to see now if racists stop eating or buying food, shopping, I should say, at Asda. Again, we should make it widely known that the owner of Gatwick Airport is a black man.
It's a Nigerian consortium, I believe.
Yes. So hopefully, racists will stop flying from Gatwick as well.
You know what? I think what will happen is that you're going to hear about that buyout of Asda on sort of like the business channels. You know, like Sky Business or CNBC News, but you won't hear that on mainstream television. They'll probably keep that quiet.
Yeah, definitely. So Charmaine Bradshaw says, do they have to be accompanied, I wonder? Yes, they definitely do, Charmaine. You cannot send your teenage children to Asda to eat by themselves. They won't be allowed in, or they won't be allowed to eat for free. So there has to be an adult with them, but it doesn't matter how many children are within that group or that family group, that all the children can eat free.
Yeah, Charmaine, I just spoke to them. They said, yeah, you got to accompany your son.
Yeah. Glow says, big up to Marcus Rashford. And Donovan says, bless up the twins. So that's next year. We continue with our stories, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, we have a very, very interesting thing, which the BFI have done, which is the British Film Institute. They have got a collection of Black Lives films, which spread over many different generations and decades. So we'll see some from the noughties, but some as far back as 1950, and it's just an absolutely wonderful collection of again films that we're probably not familiar with, or documentaries we're not familiar with. So definitely, please go and check that out. I'm just looking for the actual link so that I can just say it so that you can get it. Hopefully we can put this up in the thing for you. So again, it's at the bfi.org.uk, and it's a collection called Black Lives. So please check that out. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Now, as we've seen, we've come out of lockdown, Tony. We've noticed that a lot of organizations are now opening their doors for the very first time. People are, again, after lockdown, being able to go out, do a little bit of shopping, meet up with family and friends again at each other's houses. But also church has opened their doors again, and absolutely wonderful things have been happening in church. Let's have a look at this next clip, please. Wow, boy. The church said, get rid of that. Get rid of that. The churches, boy. Oh my goodness, the church don't stop. The pastor of that church must have sat down. I said, Lord, oh, we can't get this money from these corona people. Them, please anoint me with an idea.
You see them with a remote control going.
Yeah, yeah. Look, brother James' pocket look full. Let me go to him. But could you imagine that? Next, they'll have drones in church, mate. Because if you don't put money in the collection, the drone will be watching you. You come up on the big screen.
But in some churches, I know they've actually got ATM machines that you can use your credit card with, can't you? And then donate and something like that. So church ain't messing about when it comes to his money.
Listen, there was a church in Brixton Hill where I can't remember the name of the church, but the pastor, he was one of those modern pastors. He used to come to church in a long leather coat. That church was the first church I knew that did credit card machines. Because one of my brethren went there, and you know what we do back in the day, and when the thing they pass the thing down the aisle, and you say, "Oh, I don't have no small change," and yeah, we take credit card. I was like, the credit card machine at church, they're not playing, mate. Not playing at all, man. But what has anybody been to church since lockdown has eased? Is anything different? I know we spoke a couple of weeks ago where people were saying that a lot of the churches are doing stuff online now, but have you, or has your church, have you gone back to church where the doors have been opened? Do you find anything's changed as the way how you communicate with each other, the way you fellowship with each other? Has that changed, or is it just business as usual? Let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, but I guess they're finding, because obviously the church has to survive somehow, and the pastor has to get paid, and people have to live even, you know, during the pandemic. So they're going to find the best ways. I think Karen just said, yeah, cash machines. They do things. Some churches do something called a deed of covenant, where you can sign over your taxes.
Yes.
Percentage of your taxes. You can donate your jewelry. You can let the church inherit your house when you die. There's all kind of ways of making money, and you know that little remote control is novel, though. That little remote control plate is novel.
Well, Angela Cozier says that they also do direct debit.
Right.
Some churches are very how can I put it, very astute as regards to paying your tithe, which is 1/10 of your earning. But again, there are some different ways that churches have decided to get a contribution from you. I know of a few churches where they will do your will for free. But again, if you leave a proportionate amount of your assets to the church, that's the way how they take payment for it. So there's so many different ways that you can support your church, because again, I think there's times when the churches are there for some of their congregation. Not saying all churches, but some churches. And if your church has been there for you, then why not be there for your church? So very simple. And again, we've seen some churches who do a wonderful service over the winter months where they provide food and clothing for the homeless. So again, I think, you know, where there's a church that has a strong community ties, then let's see if we can do anything to support them.
So was that the Ruach church you were talking about in Brixton Hill? Because Denise Francis used to go there.
Yeah, yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Bishop John Francis. Yeah.
You're sure he's not related? You're sure? He's not a cousin or a brother or a lover? That's a scandal.
Some time ago, I actually saw, just flicking through the channels, I did actually see a service with him, and he seems to have an American accent now. I don't know. His accent seems to change.
It's like sex, Tony. Evangelism sells. And if you can put a little swang on your accent, I want to talk to you all today. And the Lord told me, if I shake your hand and you can't give me a little bit of money for the collection bag, he said, take your rings and things.
It's a serious business, man. Religion is a serious business.
He says, if your credit card can't swatch, I'll take your watch. Oh dear, oh dear.
Boy.
Yeah, it's all good. One of the funniest stories that has emerged this week was what happened to a group of passengers at Heathrow terminal. I'm not sure which terminal at Heathrow when they was waiting for their luggage on the conveyor belt. This happened. Run the clip, please.
Away my luggage there. Away my luggage there. You see our luggage? Me not see no luggage. Yes, sir. I can take a walk over, yes, sir.
Wow. Absolute madness. Well, what can we say? I've heard about crabs in a barrel, mate, but crabs at the airport.
Wow. Where were they coming from? Where was that flight?
Well, listen, I don't know where the flight was coming from or going to. However, I do believe that the luggage that those crabs came out of was a Nigerian woman who
Right.
was on her travels, and somehow because there was loads of them.
Right.
How?
They get through the airport in Nigeria. Well,
I don't know if she was coming from Nigeria or going to Nigeria, but that
Right.
was at Heathrow Airport. So I don't know where she was coming from.
yeah, right. But how did it? But still, how did that get through the airport, wherever she was coming from?
Exactly.
No scandal?
That should raise some kind of alarm somewhere, because I thought that they x-rayed every suitcase, every bit of luggage before it gets on a plane. So how live crabs? I don't know. I don't know. Donna Ben says, nope, my luggage would have gone round and round and round and round. She said, no, sir.
Maybe the lady's got a restaurant or something.
Well, listen, at least the crabs is fresh.
Even though it might have been tired from that flight.
Oh my goodness, boy. I'm telling you, Blossom says I would never travel abroad again.
Evening Blossom, evening Adriana. How you doing, guys?
And again, yeah, exactly. Charmaine says, wasn't she afraid of border control? I mean, how do you explain that? How do you explain? There were so many of them. How do you explain that? I mean, yeah, I've got to say, I would have been gone, man. I would have been out of there. I would have been absolutely out of there.
Yeah, but how do you pick your bags up, right? When you got crabs running along the sort of conveyor belt, put your hand out, get your
Not
case,
me.
and you got crabs.
Me, mate. And you know what? I've got to admit, I'm not really squirmish as when it comes to like animals and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about crabs, man, that spook me the hell out. I number one, they run sideways. Which other animal or anything else does that? That alone shows you it's weird. And they always look like they're ready for beef. The way how their arms are like this all the time. Yeah. You want some? Hey. They always look like they're ready for trouble. And if them things capture you,
Yeah.
No. Carolyn says the woman was crabalicious. Some of you people could have made it as comedians, I gotta love our viewers. I love our viewers. Oh, but it's true what I'm saying.
Can you imagine the interview that she must have had in the back room when the customs took her around the back? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear how she explained it.
Yeah. And it's true, like crabs have got a different kind of character, because Denise Francis have just pointed out, I don't know, has anybody else seen this? But I've seen 2 videos of, crabs smoking cigarettes. Actually, I'm blowing out the smoke,
Are you serious?
I'm 100% serious. I've seen 2 videos of crabs smoking. How and why, I have no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. How can they walk forwards with the claws, Mister? I don't know how they're supposed to walk forwards. Every animal and creature walk forwards. Even snake who don't have legs move forwards. I just
So
crap.
they walk sideways while smoking.
Exactly.
I bet the crab could drive too.
Oh man. Listen, we're just going to have a brief talk and conversation as well as regards to the next installment of Small Axe. I don't know, did you manage to see any of it at all, Tony?
You know what, Mr. I'm going to be honest with you. No. I don't know if I've lost the wind in my sail for these series of shows. I'll probably try and have a look at this and see.
Yeah.
I think the Lovers Rock kind of done it for me, to be honest with you. Although I did sort of tune into the Leroy Logan thing a bit. My motivation to watch them has not really been high. What have I missed?
Well, to be honest with you, I felt exactly the same way as you, Tony. In fact, I made a conscious decision not to watch it this week because I thought, no, you've duped me for the last 2 weeks. It shall not happen a third time. Has any of our viewers watched the third installment? Sorry, there's the fourth installment of Small Axe, which is, of course, the Alex Wheatle story. Alex Wheatle was brought up in care homes, numerous different care homes, went through life in the 70s in Brixton, of which had a very, very, very big impact on himself and, again, his life. Did anybody watch the show? So here we go. Angela Cozier says, Small Axe on Sunday was really good, but the accents were really bad. Wow. How are we not getting Caribbean accents right in 2020? How? Who are these people?
I think it's probably Jim Davidson is the consultant for the show.
It must be the vocal coach.
Well, when you speak like this, hello there, man. I was going down the road to go to the Caribbean shop, and I wanted to order some curry coke. Not curry coke, curry coke and rice and peas. Where are you getting these actors from? However, I do hear that the actual storyline and the actual episode was fantastic. I've heard lots of good reports. Denise Francis says, I watched it, really enjoyed it. Accents were a little bit off, and Robbie G played his part very well. Yet Robbie G played the part of Alex Wheatle's prison cell buddy, who had a little bit of a problem with his belly, from what I've heard. Charmaine Bradshaw says that's the moment she had to switch off the RAS on the toilet seat.
Robbie's a good actor, though.
He is a very good actor, very good actor. But again, the use of music in this episode, man. I mean, I haven't seen it all, but I've seen little clips. But the use of music, Tony, I've got to tell you, because I know you're a connoisseur of all different kind of genres of music, but there's something special about the way they've interwoven the music into this storyline, man. It's just, and again, the choice of certain songs as well. The Abyssinians. There is a land far, far away. It's just poignant to the storyline and the time as well. So that, again, they even mention again about the New Cross fire, 13 dead and nothing said. So it just brought up so many accurate moments in our history, Tony. And I think, again, I think this one is one to definitely watch if you can excuse the accents.
Right. So Sean says, evening guys, a few dodgy accents. However, it was good to hear Alex's story. You know, it made me do some further research about him. You know, I mean, about the accents, right? I mean, they were dodgy in real life. I don't understand. I mean, they were sort of English Caribbean. You know, they were English versions of what we thought sounded like patois, but they were the English version. That's how they spoke in the 70s and 80s. There wasn't much authenticity from what I recall personally. You're saying no, Mrs.
No, Tony. These accents are, If you was talking like this back then, people would have thought you was an undercover police. That's the only explanation for it. Yeah, you'd have to be undercover police in blackface. That's the only way you could be getting that accent so wrong. And that's the thing. It's like in that era, it's either you don't get me wrong. We all spoke a little bit of patois, but this kind of patois is more like pate. It just ain't us. So we do the little bit of English, we do a little bit of patois, but each bit would be authentic in its own tone.
Right.
See what I mean? We're not trying to be yardies or whatever, but it was authentic to everybody else around us in that kind of time and era. This is alien. It's completely alien.
I'm going to tune into it now. I'm going to now that we've discussed it, I'm going to have a look.
Yeah. And Tegan Allison says, I've enjoyed them all for the mere fact to see all black every Sunday. And the topics covered have been on point, albeit based around London people's stories. True. This week would be the last, and I would definitely miss seeing black on a Sunday. Let's hope Smolax Series 2 will be better after lessons learned. And, I think that's a very good point, Alison, to be honest with you. It has been refreshing to say, you know what, 9 o'clock on a Sunday, I can get my children together. I can get the family together. We can get the family together, and we can sit down and watch something that has a reflection upon us, which is historical to us. And for that, I think we have to be grateful, because I can't remember the last time we could actually do that. To be honest with you, once upon a time, it might have been. Was it Stars on Sunday or whatever? It seems like there's been a long time since you could sit down as a family and watch something together. Be it the Waltons back in the day, or the Little House on the Prairie back in the day. But there is a good feeling about this. And I think as regards to Series 2 as well, from what I've heard, I know because of the comments from the Lovers Rock episode, that they are actively reaching out to certain people for feedback. I spoke to a comedian today, and she actually was very vocal as regards to what she thought about the Lovers Rock story, and they have actually contacted her for her thoughts and opinions. So I think that's progress, man. That's progress. If they take these comments and points on, we can only get a better Series 2 of Smolax. Tony?
Yeah, Karen James there says, but you do have a lot of Jamaican accents in real life, and that's the point I'm making, Karen. Yes, you're absolutely right. Again, because I haven't seen it, so I can't say whether or not those fake accents in the show are reminiscent of the Jamaican accents in real life. But that is absolutely true. That is the case, because not everybody came from Jamaica, but we all attempted to use the patois in some way, and some of us didn't really sound right doing it. So it was there, but whether the show reflects that properly, I mean, I'll have to see.
And Tracy's saying, we're so quick to boycott our films when we see a few misrepresentations, but we continue to watch white films and series when there's no sign of us at all. Very good point, Tracy. Very, very good point. And Charmaine actually says there was a piece in The Guardian calling for more features about other regions' black stories. So again,
yeah,
I
agree with that. I mean, I understand why London would be the focus, but I mean, there are a lot of stories from around the country too.
Carolyn says 9 p.m. picnic, go on your bed. Oh, have mercy.
Sandra Henry says, I lost interest. Why did you lose interest, Sandra?
Oh, yeah.
Why did you lose interest?
She's saying getting their money by any means necessary. Yes, Sandra, it'd be interesting to find out why you said you've lost interest. Have you lost interest in the whole series, or you just lost interest in trying to get our stories told from a different perspective? Please clarify. But again, I think Sean Della has the right comment here. She says, support Small Axe, guys. Don't just
Yeah.
switch off because of one bad one. And you know what, Sean, I think you're 100% right. It's not. I'm not saying that I switched off from Small Axe. I just took a pause. You know, sometimes for us as black people, we like to do that. It's like, hold on. You know what? Let me just go watch and see. So I've watched, I've seen, and what I've heard, I'm definitely going to watch it. 100%.
And Barbara makes a good point. Evening, Barbs. She says that with all the criticism, we need to be careful that it doesn't have the opposite effect. The BBC may decide not to bother in future. And so, yeah, I mean, really, when you compare the criticisms that we make, which pretty much are small, in comparison to the stories that are being told, yes, we should probably make more effort, and that includes me, to support these shows so that more can be made.
And I think, you know what, Barbara, I think your comment is so important for us all as a community to pick up on, because we have done, we've said a lot about Steve McQueen, to be honest with you, especially with that Lovers Rock episode. There was a lot said about Steve McQueen, and even myself, hands up, I'm going to say this publicly, that I feel that I went a little bit too far as regards to questioning Steve's authenticity as regards to his blackness. And I think that's a little bit out of order. So, Steve, I'm going to apologize first and foremost, because I think, Barbara, you're right. I think it's not about being how can I put it? Being criticizing. We need to be balanced in our viewpoints. I think, again, we've got to be able to take because sometimes I think we've waited so long as a people for something what has a reflection of ourselves. And so when we don't get what we're expecting, we get upset and we get angry. And however, when we're giving criticism or feedback, we can hear the anger still in our voices. And we've got to remember that for some cultures, when we are so passionately speaking with a hint of anger, it's frightening for them. And you're right. What happens to them is like, whoa, listen, I don't like that energy. Let's not touch that or go there again. So I think we have to really have a understanding as people that we have to be able to give feedback in a non-biased way, and in a way where we sometimes we take the anger out, man, and we just, let's not be so emotional sometimes with certain things, and present our feedback in a very relaxed and calm manner so that it feels a lot easier for people to receive it. So very good point, Barbara Powell.
And Donna says that we generally put pressure on our own, but that's because we were brought up to be better and show ourselves as better.
Definitely. And because we've got to say that, Steve didn't have to do this. He didn't have to say that, you know what, I want to create a series of films to be shown, prime time-ish on BBC, all about Black history, Black legacy. It's a big gamble. He's putting his neck on the block, really. If he gets this wrong, he may not be able to ever come back to BBC and do something like that again. So, I think, we have to be supportive, we have to be nurturing, and we have to be fair in our feedback. I think that's what we need to. I think for us as viewers and as a community, we can do more of, definitely.
Sandra says was a bit disappointed, but was going to watch it later on, catch up. Yeah, those of us who haven't watched the latest one, let's try and make it a point of doing so. Let's support it as much as we can.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it can only get better. It can only get better. It can only get better. Just want to finish up before we hand over to Tony as regards to, obviously, in the next few weeks, the festive season will be in full swing. And here at What a Week, we have decided to have our very last show of the year is going to be a special one. Myself and Tony are actually in the midst of planning a wonderful, wonderful end of year show for you. So please make sure that you are ready to tune in. And one of you is going to win an absolutely fantastic prize. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's going to be an absolutely fantastic prize. So that's going to be our end of the year special. It won't be called What a Week. It'll be called, Tony,
What a year.
What a Year. What a year. So that gives you a clue. It's going to be calling What a Year. So make sure you tune in. Again, if there's any stories that we've covered throughout the whole of 2020 that really, really, really tickled your fancy, or if there's a particular moment in 2020 that you want us to cover, please, 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 over the next couple of weeks, we've got 2 weeks left, make sure we get those comments, those thoughts, those ideas, and we will see and try our best to include them with the stuff that we've already got planned for you. So, Tony, you've been taking us on this wonderful, natural, mystic journey of blackness. Please continue with what you've got for us this week. Tony Crossbody, ladies and gentlemen, with our Black History Month selection.
Right. So after last week's discussion, I received a few messages saying that it was what we discussed was pretty much a hard swallow, effectively, for some. They found it very, very challenging, simply because, well, it's because the narrative hasn't been heard before and put in that way. So tonight we're gonna sort of expound on that a little bit and then move into more detail and sort of demonstrate the proof about Black history and the identity of these people, because according to historians, you turned up in history 500 years ago in chains. Nobody seems to know where you came from. Nobody knows where you're going. And even our historians within our own community, while they give you details about great Black empires, we have never heard anybody really tracing the lineage to where we are today, who we are, and where we've come from. Of course, we call ourselves Caribbeans, Jamaicans, St. Lucians, Trinidadians, but these places are transshipment points. These are places where packages were dropped off and then picked up. And because we have nothing else, we grab onto these identities and identify ourselves in this way. So, for example, you'll normally find at carnival time, we would all have our respective flags and say, well, I'm from here and this is my flag, or I'm from there and have that flag.
Represent your flags, represent your colors. Yeah.
Represent the colors, right? And it's all different colors. And, you know, throughout the decades, we've even taken it as far as saying which island is the best. We're the best at this, or your small island this, or your boast of this, right? Never really understanding who we really are and why we were taken and where we were taken from. So I'm going to cover this again in a bit more detail. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the box. Mr. C,
I'll read them out.
Some of the questions you can ask me, and then I'll see if I can weave the actual answers in if they're relevant to the topic at hand. So let's have the first slide up again, please. So we were talking about this idea that Black people do not just come from Africa, right? Some do, but we have seen in the last few weeks that Black people have come from all over the world. We've seen Black kings and queens of England. We've seen emperors of Russia and of Spain and all these places, that these were Black people. And so we go back down to this idea of Spain. The reason why I like to spend a lot of time here is because this is where the real clues are to the history of these people, of who you are. Now, in Spain, the Catholics drove the Muslims out of Spain round about 1492. And within Spain were pretty much three groups of people. So you had people known as the Catholics. They were a very mixed group of people. And then you had two separate Black nations. One were the Jews, and the second were the Muslims, who had remained behind in Spain. Now, these individuals, or these groups of people, were persecuted in something known as the Spanish or the Catholic Inquisition. So the Catholic Inquisition was the means by which all non-Catholics were forced to convert their religion from Islam or from Judaism to Catholicism.
Was this because of the Romans, the Roman invasion, or was this just because of the people actually in that particular region at the time, the Spanish kind of region at the time?
Right. So it was. So the by this time, 1492, the Roman Catholic Church had been well established for about 1,000 years.
Okay.
So it saw itself as the spiritual representation of God on earth, and it would not tolerate competitive belief systems, and especially the Jews, because the Jews were well known worldwide as having a history that was closely aligned with the Most High. And in fact, everywhere the Jews went, they were highly respected as being, you know, the spiritual ambassadors of the world, and that had to be suppressed. And the Catholic Church would not take any type of competition where that was concerned. It saw itself wholly and solely as God's representatives on earth. So in order to quell the influence of the Jews and of Islam, people were forced to accept their religion on pain of death.
Wow, it's deep, man.
Right. So what happened is they first of all fled into Portugal, where if you look on your map, you're going to see Portugal on the extreme left of the Iberian Peninsula, until the king in Portugal also made that same ruling, saying that the Jews had to convert, and then they basically had to escape and go across the Strait of Gibraltar into Africa, where you can see just at the bottom of that picture, where it says the Almohad Caliphate. Okay, that's the African continent. And they basically spread in there. Now, next slide, please. So, Mr. C, if you can sort of read just the underline for us, please, so we can get a handle on who these people were.
Sorry, I got to make my screen a little bit bigger. Give me 1 second, please. God, this writing's small for me now. It says, Africans also settled along parts of the Malabar coast during the 17th and 18th centuries. They were Black Jews, descendants of African slaves.
Thank you. So these individuals, right, were Black Jews. They were descendants of those who were taken from Portugal and from the west of Africa to the New World. And they were identified as Black Jews. So even though history tells us that these Black people came from varying tribes, when you actually do a little more digging, you actually find out these individuals have Hebrew ancestry. And they were chased out of Portugal into Africa. The Portuguese went into Africa and asked their allies, who they had, a lot of the African tribes, to help drag these people out. And they put them on ships and sent them to the Caribbean. Now we know this for sure, because if we look at the next slide, right, this tells us something about Jamaica. Mr. C?
It says, the first Africans to arrive in Jamaica came in 1513 from the Iberian Peninsula.
Thank you.
Wow.
So they didn't come from Africa. They came from the Iberian Peninsula. This is Spain and Portugal. But notice they used very tricky language. They tell you that it's the first Africans. They didn't tell you, you notice it wasn't Black Jews. They said the first Africans. But those people that came out of the Iberian Peninsula were Jews, were persecuted Jews who would not bend their knee to Catholicism. So just to confirm that, notice this rabbi in this next clip, what he tells us.
Another area in Africa who have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people. or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today, who are white, Caucasian people, came in a little bit later on.
I want to discuss a little bit.
Good. So here the rabbi says that maybe he says,
His body
maybe,
language says it all, though, doesn't it, man?
all, right? Maybe they were the original Israelites that were taken from Western Nigerian ports. You see? And then maybe they, the white modern Jews, came in afterwards. They were people that became, through conversion, they became Jews a period after that. So,
sorry, Tony. Even though he was telling truth there, he was still trying to mix it up, because he said a little bit later on, like as though it's like they came like 30 minutes later. oh, you lot are late.
Yeah, right. Right.
But his whole body language is giving it up. The way how he's just moving from side to maybe this and maybe yeah. Sorry, Tony. Go.
So they know, they do know. Obviously, they're not going to tell you. The whole point is to keep you in the dark, right? And that, you know, black people will be the last to know. And one of the reasons why we would tend to be, because we're not great readers. We don't pretty much enjoy reading that much. So
and not only that, Tony, it's not so much that we don't like reading that much. It's sometimes is that, you know, when you're reading a language which is not your original language as well, that, you know, they have a very, very good way of hiding things with different words which we can't resonate with. So again, the Iberian Peninsula, we as black people, what am I talking about? Iberian, move on along. But so again, it's very much like what we were saying earlier on with like the Black Lives Matter in the Vicar of Dibley. I can understand Tarquin up in Taunton and be like, what is this? It doesn't mean anything to me. And so they will dismiss it. And so that's the same thing with us. But because we're reading and speaking in somebody else's language, that there's things which are hidden in plain sight.
Right. And then, of course, the way we have been taught from school, you know, from nursery, coming up through school, and then by means of the television once we left school or we went to university and had higher education. Our history makes absolutely no sense. But there are people out there who do know it, and the trail is there for you to follow if we know how to follow it. So obviously that's been my sort of mission for myself, to sort of follow this trail, see where it leads, and then if I ever came to a conclusion, I would share it. So we have these people that were transported to the New World, and of course these people had a history, which we find in a book called the Bible. And in the very Bible that they wrote, their ancestors wrote. Next slide. They foretold, right? They foretold their own fate. So they foretold themselves as ending up in ships, being sold, and never being rescued. Next slide. And they also foretold the fact that they would be in that situation for 400 years. Now, the question we have to deal with, and we touched on it last week, and I'm going to talk about it again today, is why? Why did this happen? Because we have, from our understanding, we thought that we were just enjoying life in civilization in Africa, wherever we were, and then just evil men came and took us away for absolutely no reason and have been persecuting us for 400 years. But there is a story behind this. Next slide. So the story of these people is very much like a marriage. And in this marriage, the man represents the Most High God and the woman represents the nation. This was a marriage that took place over 3,000 years ago when the nation, after they were rescued out of Egypt, made what is called a covenant with God. And God made a covenant with them. Now, a covenant is like a contract where two parties sign and agree to a set of rules. But this contract or covenant can affect people that are not even there. So if this married couple in this picture have children, the fate of those children are dependent upon that marriage being stable.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of the covenant that God made with his people, the children that came from that relationship, i.e. the descendants, you and I, right, and everybody today, would be affected by the relationship that the nation had with the Most High. Next slide. So let's look in the Bible itself, in Deuteronomy 28. Right, this was the contract that the Most High set up with the people. He says, look, do not turn aside from any of the commands I give you today, to the right or to the left, following other gods and serving them. So in other words, following other gods in the eyes of God would be like a woman running off with another man, right? That would break the contract of marriage, or that would be adultery. And it goes on to say, however, if you do not obey the Lord your God and do not carefully follow all his commands and decrees that I am giving you today, all these curses will come on you and overtake you. So if they were obedient, what God had promised is that this nation would be the foremost nation of the world. Right? If they had obeyed, we wouldn't be having a show today talking about any of this, because this nation would be ruling the world.
Denise Francis says, I do find history hard, but I want to learn real history. Thank you, Tony. I've learned from you and will be looking for myself now.
Right. So it comes with consequences. If you were to get into an arrangement with the Queen or or the government, right, and you put a tender out, your company, for example, decide that you were going to do some work for the government said, well, we're going to pay you X amount, and you decided to pull out of that deal, you can only imagine what the government would do to you.
The ramifications, man.
The ramifications with the government, right?
Yeah.
Are severe. So what happened is, in the history, is that these people, they broke this agreement. They started worshiping other gods. They turned their back and they just wanted to do their thing. The Bible talks about how these people are stiff-necked and stubborn, and all they like to do is rave. Right? All they want to do is rave. That's what it says. And on top of all of that, next slide. The nation is guilty of the greatest crime because they have the blood of Christ on their hands. It was those ancestors who sold him out to the Romans. And not only were they happy to do this and take the blame, they were also happy to share the blame with you, the descendants. So a crime like this would never go unanswered. This is the Most High you're dealing with.
Basically, it's joint enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, it's deep, man.
You have to you share the blame. Your children and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, those not even born yet, still in your loins, share the blame. You're part of a covenant that you were not around to sign, but has direct implications on your life. So we find ourselves now in what you'd probably best term as exile. The original land that God had promised to his people is now being occupied by somewhere else. You are spread out throughout the earth, right? You're in the West, in the Americas, you're in the Pacific Islands, you're spread out in the Middle East, in Turkey, in Africa. And your concern is basically the way you're being treated. So you've got these great plans. You've got these leaders that come up every once in a while talking about black people need to be free. You've got these great ideas like let's set up banks, let's set up institutions, let's build our own cities, let's segregate ourselves. But what does the Most High think about all your plans? Next slide.
The Lord will send on you curses, confusion, and rebuke in everything you put your hand to.
Right. So no matter what you try to do, yeah, you can do Black Pound Day. All these things are good, but they're merely a drop in the ocean as far as your situation is concerned. Our family units are a mess. Our youngsters are run amok. We have no cohesion as a people. We have no direction. Why? Because we have confusion. And it's interesting, it's not just in one country, it's every country that you go to. Go to America, you see how your brothers are being treated there. Go to Brazil, you see how your brothers are being treated there. Go to Europe, you see how your brothers are being treated there.
Australia, all over.
Australia. Even if you go to the Caribbean, where many of you claim to come from, right, where you make up the majority of those populations, you are still the poorest groups. Why? Because everything that you put your hand to and everything you try to do, the Most High says, I'm going to mash it up.
Well, listen, Priti Patel is giving free flights to Jamaica at the moment, and some people don't even want to go, bro. So it's deep.
Right. And they abuse you every day of the week and twice on Sundays, right? Every time you appear on television and you want to do something, you say Black Lives Matter, they tell you all lives matter. You appear on Loose Women, they're going to complain. You want people to take a knee in solidarity with you, they're going to complain. Everywhere you go, and it's non-stop. Furthermore, you have lived your whole life as a homeless nation with no sense of identity. Next slide. And that is how the Most High describes you, right? You are a lost sheep. You're just wandering about. So it's no wonder, see, that your youngsters, your children, they cling to something. What? They're British. We're British, right? You've got to have something. You can't have no identity. So your children, your grandchildren, can only see themselves as British. See?
Well, I know that sheep's from South London.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's from Baalam.
Baalam. Right?
So I couldn't resist it, Tony.
Yeah. And so the Most High had to put this nation on what we currently term as the naughty step. Right? Because the crimes were so bad. We had a golden opportunity and we threw it away. Next slide. Mr. C, would you read that first, please?
The Lord says, children, I didn't divorce your mother or sell you to pay debts. I divorced her and sold you because of your sins.
Right. So in this analogy that God is speaking about here, the mother is the nation. Right? You are the children. And God is trying to explain to you that it wasn't because he was broke that he had you sold. He got rid of your mother, which was the nation, and sold you because your crimes were so great, he couldn't deal with you no more. He couldn't deal with you no more. And he promised that while you were in captivity, right, you would be on your own. And look what's happened.
It's a harsh one, man. It's a harsh one. I mean, some people will say, "Where is the love?" But it's about consequence, I suppose. Tony, no?
Well, anybody who's grown up with a balanced black father in the household, who's basically told you the consequences of certain actions, will understand this.
Mm.
You see, and you just can't get away with, you know, there are consequences to making deals. You have to know who you're making deals with.
100%.
Right? When you go into arrangements or contracts, understand that the power that you're making, the power of the company that makes a contract with you, right, will determine the level. Right? It will determine the level of consequence should you decide not to hold up your end.
Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time. We see this with all of us who have got cars, man. We've seen, if you park your car on a double yellow line, you get a fine, you don't pay that fine, they come eventually clamp your car. Next thing you know, you're owed $2,000. Next thing you know, bailiffs are at your doors. Next thing you know, they might take away your flat screen TV. Why take away my flat screen TV and left the wife? Take the wife as well.
Right, and it can go on. Right, the longer you leave it,
the more it escalates.
The more it escalates.
And all you did was just parked on a double yellow line.
That's it. That's how it started off.
Yeah, but it's because of the contract that you've got with the DVLA, which allows them to escalate these consequences. Right. Yeah.
Right. So how much more so when, as a national group, historically you have a deal with the Most High that you didn't keep, and furthermore, you kill his son when he sent his son to you to try and make things right. Why would you get away? Why should you live like everybody else? You see, and these verses prove that you are the people, right? Anybody else who's masquerading as you can't be the real people. Why? Because everybody else is above you. Every other nation on earth is above you, and they know this. The world is run. We know for the most part the world, it's a white world. It's been run. Facts. Even Africa is run by whites. Right? You run nothing. The Bible says that you're not the head, you're the tail. And and you shouldn't have been. You shouldn't have been.
Man.
You threw away the privilege that God gave you to rule this world.
Well, Tony, what you're saying is so true, because the only thing we run now is the 100 meters, and the only thing we're the head of, boy, is food. And again, boy, as you said, we're the tail. In our case, the only thing is oxtail to ram scrum. So, yeah, bro, what you're saying is the truth, man. And the more you reveal, the more I'm just here shaking my head, saying, you know what, it's true. It's true. Wow.
You now that you're in this position as a people, you want to rule. You wish you rule. You lick your wounds by saying, yeah, we were kings and queens and they're scared of us. And no, but they got their boots on your neck. The reality is they're not scared of you at all. You've been asking for reparations for decades and they've just completely ignored you. They know you can't do anything. They know you haven't got no military power, no military might. They can abuse you any which way they want. And the Most High has said that he will not let you get out of it until you serve a 400-year sentence. Next slide.
Sorry, go on, Tony.
Yeah, so, you read that, Mr. C, and then I'll explain it.
Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there.
Right, thank you. So the him in this respect was Abraham, right? This is the father of the nation. And before the nation even came into being, it was prophesied that his descendants would end up, notice, in a country, one particular place, right? A country that was not their own, and two things would happen to them. First, they would be enslaved, then they would be mistreated for 400 years, right? Now, the question is, Where was God talking about? So in order to find out where this particular place referred to, we have to find one country that's had his people enslaved for 400 years. Next slide. Can we enlarge that slide, please? Is it possible? Right. What you're looking at here is a House Representative Bill of the United States of America, signed in 2018 by the current President Donald Trump. This is House Representative Bill 1242, which recognizes 400 years of African American history. Now remember, we just looked at a verse where God had foretold thousands of years ago that the descendants of Abraham would be enslaved in a land for exactly 400 years. Next slide.
Angela's saying, why is this not taught in the black churches? Our history is laid out in black and white.
It's a good question, Angela, because they don't want you to know.
Yeah, because because again, some of the churches, you got to remember, are represented by certain religions, and certain religions, it's the same old.
Right. So in connection with this House Representative Bill, on your screen now is some information regarding it. Right. So it talks about how the United States will commemorate the 400th anniversary, right, of the arrival. Notice it says of Africans, right, of Africans in the English colonies of Point Comfort, Virginia, in 1619. So now notice, at the highest levels of American government, they know that the first peoples they brought into America was in 1619. If you count, and that month, the month was actually August 1619. If you count 400 years from 1619, can anybody in the comments tell me what year you would arrive at?
It's simple maths, people.
So if 1619 was the day they were to come into America, and God has said that 400 years is what they would serve, when will the end of that sentence be? Okay, let me take you out your misery.
Think about Prince.
In your mind, I'm sure you probably would have thought 2019, right? But in fact, it's 2020. Because the first enslaved peoples were brought in August of 2019, and 400 complete years would end in 2020. So think about this. 2020 arrives, and by August, what's happening? Black Lives Matter, black issues are coming to the fore. The whole world is talking about how black people are treated. George Floyd obviously has been killed by this time, and there are riots in various cities in America. In the 400th year that they were prophesied to be in a country that was not their own. Now, we know that these people were taken to other countries. We know that they were taken in Brazil, for example, 1526, and the Caribbean is in the 1500s too. But that prophecy was talking about one specific nation for exactly 400 years. And that nation is the United States of America. Now, of course, America wasn't known in Bible times when God had made that prophecy, but he could look down the corridors of time and foretell that his people would be enslaved in that country. And notice it didn't even say just enslaved, it said enslaved and mistreated. So when enslavement was over, right, they were then mistreated up till this day. Next slide. Now, going back to that very same prophecy, it says there that, again, we'll read it again. It says that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. This is America. Notice the next part. But I, that's God himself speaking, I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions.
I like the sound of this one. All right.
For those of you who've been in the church and know a little bit about Bible history, this sounds very much like the Exodus, does it not? Because you recall that the first time round the Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt, and then God punished that nation, and then the Hebrews left. So now what we're looking at is a second Exodus.
Ooh. Oh, this is sounding like Wakanda too, mate. Wow.
Right? So this is a second Exodus. So the 400 years that God has prescribed for his people has passed. We are now in a period where the Most High is preparing to judge that nation. And why? Because of what they did to you. This is all about you. Next slide. So here, this is taken from the book of Zechariah. The Most High says that I am very angry with the nations that feel secure. I was only a little angry, but they went too far with the punishment. So what the Most High here is saying is, look, he fell out with you as a nation, and he abandoned you to these nations. But the way they dealt with you was too harsh. And because of that treatment, he's going to deal with them. See? That's what this verse is saying. Because remember, this nation is God's possession. It belongs to him. And anything that people abuse or destroy, the Most High takes it very personally. Next slide. So look.
Wow.
Here we are. This is the situation that we're in right now. The Most High says that he has scattered you to the furthest countries on earth. In other words, you're all over the world. But he intends to bring you back to the land that belonged to your ancestors.
Wow.
That is called the promised land. See, this was the land that was promised to the original forefathers, Abraham. Your descendants will have this land. So you are in exile. This is not your home. The UK is not your home. You were born here. You have British nationality. But you actually have Israelite ethnicity. That's your history. Everything lines up. Why you were taken into slavery, where you were taken to into the West and various parts of the earth.
How long you're going to be there for? Yeah.
How long you were going to be there for, the country where you were going to be found. It all lines up. And the Most High's intention is to bring judgment upon the nations that abused you. So for example, you have a child, you take him to the childminder and you say to the childminder, listen, if he gets a bit out of order, you can discipline him. You come back from work and the child's bleeding on his back. Right? What are you going to do to the childminder?
Yeah.
Right? So, next slide. So this is now this is where we are now at 2020. What I'm showing you now is the Most High's timetable, right? His calendar. Mr. C, would you read that for us?
Every one of every nation, the entire earth and all its creatures, come here and listen. The Lord is terribly angry with the nations. He has condemned them to be slaughtered.
Right. So the Lord is calling for the attentions of people on earth, and particularly his own people. As you can see, he's not in a very good mood with the nations. Why? Well, look what the nations are doing to the planet, for one. Look what their intentions are. I know some of us hoping that the COVID situation is going to lift and then we'll be able to get back to some sense of normality. But I promise you this, the governments of the world have no intention.
Well, you know what, Tony, sorry to... This kind of makes sense to me now, because, you know, let's be honest, there's the powers that be know this. They know this inside out. That's why it's been buried. That's why it's been hidden. So, you know, this whole thing, this whole urgency to vaccinate, especially black people, all of a sudden. So is it because, listen, it's just a theory. It's
no. You're on the money. You're on the money.
Is this the reason why there's the urgency to vaccinate black people, because they're trying to slaughter us before the Lord slaughtered them?
There you go. That's what, it's all part of the agenda.
Wow.
It's all part of the agenda. And the hardest part to stomach is that they actually have black people working for them to achieve this. That's the hardest part to stomach. But they know this. This is why they don't teach it in the churches. Because it was the church, it was the Catholic Church that sanctioned slavery, that signed it off, that benefited from it. Right? All churches, regardless of whether you're Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever you are, they all come from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the mother church of all churches. And when pastors go for training, potential pastors go for training, they are trained in a Eurocentric version of the Bible, which doesn't cover any of this. So even though they teach at black churches, they will never teach this.
Which is the truth. I've been to many a church, and this subject has never been touched on. Never. Not at all.
Right. So we have a situation, here we are, 2020, 400 years served. The spotlight is on America. Why is it on America? Because America is the greatest nation the earth has ever seen. The greatest military power, the greatest economic power. Right? So Angela says, where is our true church? Good question, Angela. That ties into something that Charmaine asked last week, and I'll answer that very quickly. Charmaine pointed out that the Bible says, with regard to that the church is the bride of Christ. And that ties into Angela's point, which is, where is the true church? There is no such thing as church. The word church has been inserted into the Bible so that the institutions can look like they are legitimate. The original word used for church in the Bible is called ecclesia. It's a Greek word, and it means congregation. It means where people congregate together. It doesn't mean church.
Because that makes sense, Tony, because again, when Jesus in the Bible was doing his preaching, he did it outside. There was no buildings.
Right.
In fact, the one time he went to a building, he mashed it up because they was carrying on with nonsense in there.
Right. So it's not the church institution as we have been indoctrinated to believe. You see, the congregation is the congregation of God's people, i.e., those who have the bloodline lineage of those who are descendants of enslaved persons. These are the people of God. This is the congregation of God. This is the house of God. So it's got nothing whatsoever to do with any church. If you read through the Bible, and I challenge you all to do that, because this is going to affect your future. From beginning to end, the Bible is dealing with one group of people. Now, that's not to say that God rejects everybody else. No, he invites people of all races and nations to worship him, yes. But he has reserved a special relationship with his people, which has been outlined from the days of Abraham, that these were the people that God had sanctioned to rule this world. No one else. Unfortunately, your ancestors threw it away, making it such that you are now at the bottom of the pile, and nations and people that you should be ruling are ruling you for 400 years. The 400 years are now up. On the screen, you'll see God's timetable. He's angry with the nations and he has condemned them to be slaughtered. Why? Because of what they did to you in slavery. And the first stop that God is going to make is with America. Next slide. So, Mr. C, can you read that first?
Watch and be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told.
So,
Habakkuk,
yeah, 1 verse 5.
1 verse 5. Now, obviously, I'm familiar with my books of the Bible. Habakkuk is not in the King James Version.
It is in every version, brother.
Okay, cool.
It's what they call the minor prophets. They refer to it as minor prophets. It's a small book, 3 chapters, so it's easy to pass. But in this particular verse, God has foretold that all of you are going to see something you will never believe it was going to happen. And that's God's judgment on the United States. Now, what's really interesting is that, remember, we saw in the previous slide how God has a judgment with all nations. Next slide. God's judgment is not limited to the United States alone. It will be coming here. Remember, the UK is one of the closest allies to the United States. And the UK was heavily involved in slavery and in the mistreatment of God's people. And God has an appointment to keep with this nation. So, next slide. If you're interested in further information about the links between those who were enslaved and the Bible and the people of the Bible, I recommend this book. It's not a heavy read. It's got a lot of good information about it, and it touches on many of the things that I've covered in my talks. And I thoroughly encourage you or your children, get one for each member of your family to look it up. And as I said, some fascinating information. But next week, I'm going to talk about exactly what's going to go down in America, because the Bible outlines it in great detail, how things are going to go down, how the Most High is going to bring judgment to America, how you are going to be affected by it, and then what happens when God brings judgment to the UK and the other American allies. So just when you thought that things couldn't get no worse, or perhaps you were looking forward to COVID being lifted and getting back to your life, you're going to see a change in the world in a way that you never expected.
Wow,
because your 400 years are up.
Wow. And you know what, to be honest with you, we're starting to see some changes already. We're starting to see things which I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. So, and this is just a tip of a very, 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 very sunken and massive iceberg, it seems like, Tony. Angela Cozier says, should we be teaching? Should we be looking at Judaism teaching?
No, absolutely not. What I would recommend people do is just start a course of Bible reading. Start with the Gospels, right? And understand that all the characters you're reading about in the Bible are black and that they're related to you. So I would start that. I would start, 3 chapters a day. Just read some of the stories about how the people were. You'll see a lot of resemblance between how the people were in the days of Christ and how we are today.
Yeah.
And the attitudes that prevail.
And
you go on.
No, go on, Tony. Sorry.
No, you'll see the attitudes that Christ was up against, and why this nation. You'll understand when you read his story. You'll understand why this nation was judged in the way it was. But we're fortunate. This generation, our generation, are the luckiest of all generations that have had to suffer this. Why? Because we were born at the tail end of 400 years. Most of us are doing all right. Most of us, we have a house, we have 2 houses. Some of us we have 2 holidays a year, 3 holidays a year. We travel, right? There are some of us who've never actually heard the N-word shouted at us in our life.
So true.
Right? So we are very, very blessed. We weren't born in 1769. We were born in 1969. Right? So 50 years away or 40 years away from the end of the judgment. And now we're here. And now the Most High is going to do what he has to do. So this is why, the churches teach that, Christ is going to come out the sky and any day now because we're in the last days. No, that's not the timetable. The timetable is around the Hebrews who had to be judged first. When their judgment was finished, God would bring judgment upon the nations. So his people are what they call the house of God. We are the house of God. And once that judgment and that punishment was meted out, punishment would then be visited upon the nations. So now that's over. The Most High has now given us a timetable of what's soon to occur. So as Mr. C pointed out, the fact that black people are being called to the front of the line to get your vaccines is no coincidence. And you're going to see more calls for that as time goes on. But watch America. That's going to be the key. That's the first nation that God has in mind. Watch what happens there.
Well, no doubt there'll be some parallels to the times of Moses. I'm thinking, because all throughout what you're saying, Tony, all I can hear in my head is a song. I can't remember who sang it. Mind you, lick them with diseases. Me say the terrible diseases. I feel something is coming, and for some people it's not going to be nice. But for some people, it'll be a time for us to, buckle down and get through this. Because even in the times of Moses, even in the times of freedom out of bondage, there's still an uncomfortable journey. So it's good times, but yeah, it's gonna be different. The way of life that you've known will change. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the governments are pushing for these vaccines for a reason, right? The World Economic Forum, the United Nations, they have a plan for this world in the way they want it to go. But their plan is going to meet head on with the plan of the Most High. And there's going to be a takedown of nations that has never been seen before in the history of the world. And we are going to be alive to see that. Wow. So, Tony, man, you're dropping gems that have never shone before in the day of light in my lifetime, sir. And I'm a man, I can say now, who was a child who grew up through the church system. So many different Church of England, Seventh-day Adventists. I've been to the odd Pentecostal, Jehovah Witness. I've been to a few different. I've heard some very, very, very terrible preachers and teachers, and lots of amazing ones. And this is the first time I'm getting this kind of knowledge, sir. So number one, I salute you. I thank you, man, for the amount of hard work that you must have gone through putting this all together again, and keeping us updated throughout the journey. Those who have just probably tuned in this week for the first time or last week for the first time, the fact that you go back and you give them that little bit of knowledge and foundation, that you always start with the foundation. I know for some of you, you've seen it before, but again, when things are repeated, it sticks in. And it's really important for people who have just joined, say like for today, that they understand, they've got that foundation so that they can stand on that and take that knowledge further. But again, please, as you must, we can't just rely on Tony. It's each and every single one of us. Our duty now is to start to do a little bit of research. Those of you who say that, you've got nothing to do with the Bible, etc., etc. But again, if we look at it from a historical point of view, you can't argue with what's there. So those who have ears, let them listen. Those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have mouth, talk the things. Tony.
Yeah, so as I said, I can only encourage those of you, if you've got a Bible in your house, dust it down, have a read of it, understand that they're all black characters. That's a family album, right? It's not a religious book, it's a history book.
Yeah.
A history book of you. And you won't know your history if you don't look into it.
Yeah. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, make them family members. Yeah. Uncle Marcus. Yeah. Cousin Johnny. Yeah. Lukey Dookie. Yeah. Give them colloquial names so that you can really kind of, and again, you don't have to read it in that old English tongue if it feels alien to you. The Jamaica have got their own version of the Bible. You might need a translator for it because it's in patois, but again, read it and interpret it in your own tongue and how you see things now. So you don't have to say thou art, or they have, or they did.
They have the contemporary English version. It's a very simplified version to read. All the versions have some type of fault, one or the other, but you just need to sort of get something that's very simple to read. I would say the contemporary English version would be one of them, and get reading. And once you start reading and imagining these characters are related to you, you'll understand that this book is far more meaningful than you've ever been taught, because it is your family history.
And in addition to that as well, for those of you who can persevere with the traditional Bible, I always say it's always good to read things in as close to the time as possible, because the power is in the words. And then certain words which you may not understand, when you Google or look up those words, you find the core meaning or the roots of those words and where they come from, and they have a bigger meaning. So sometimes when something is done in a modern translation, those original core meanings and words are lost in the translation as well. So it's always good to look at things in the original, as close to the original format as possible. Just persevere, and anything you're not familiar with, any word you're not familiar with, look it up, but also look up the origins of that word, because sometimes one word comes from two words and it gives you a better understanding.
Right. Angela makes a good point. You can read it online too. If you don't have a Bible in your house, you can basically just type online Bible in Google search. You can even go into Play Store on your mobile and download free Bibles, right? You can download Bibles that can read the Bible to you if you don't, if you prefer. It's there. And we're in the information age, and this show is here to provide you with information. But as Mr. C says, you've got to do some of the digging yourself. I will give you the overview, but it's your responsibility to dig further so you can understand it, because your relationship with the Most High is personal to you.
And yeah, I mean, and in closing, from my perspective, Tony, I mean, again, I don't see myself as a religious person. However, I understand about the meaning of spirit, and I think this again is something which is probably going to make me more connected back to my spiritual side, because again, where am I getting my spiritual food from? I might have a little bit of a daily meditation. I might say the odd prayer here and there, but again, where am I getting my food from as regards to my spiritual connection with, the Most High, or that higher source? So again, I think it's not an easy discussion, ladies and gentlemen. It's not an easy topic, but I think we've had a lot of time in our lives where we've had those easy discussions and those easy topics, and this is one where, for those of you who are thinking, why are you none of this, man? How are you gonna start 2021? Would it be with an easy discussion, with easy topics, or are you gonna dig a little bit deeper to find out who you are, who we are, and where we're going? This has been What a Week, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Tony Crossbody, sir, thank you, salute. Final words, Tony?
So just a quick point now. Glow makes a point. She just asked basically, where is it gone? Why did the punishment not extend to others? Why was it just us? Glow, you're gonna have to look at the video from last week where I basically showed that the covenant was made just between God and this nation. It wasn't made with any other nation. That's why this nation was made to pay for it, because they pulled out of the agreement. But it's all detailed in last week's video.
And also, in addition to that, you will see that because of the unfair punishment of unfair way how we were treated within this period of time, that the Most High will also punish those nations who extended that treatment of wickedness to us as well. So that will be their time afterwards, after the 400 years.
You see, and you remember, just one last point, Christ said, the first will be last, and the last first. So you are last right now.
But number one on the good look chart. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, people, it's coming.
We'll cover some of that next week, and I'll sort of give you more details about it. Yeah,
definitely. Listen, to everybody who's joined in the conversation, we really, really thank you. I know, again, this has been an extended one, but again, ladies and gentlemen, when we're in the dance, we're not watch time. When we're in the restaurant, we're not watch time. And when we're in the bed, sleeping, we're not watch time. When it's time for us to learn, to share, and to dig a little bit deeper, we also have to give ourselves time to grow. This has been What a Week. Tony Crossbody, myself, Mr. C. Catch you next time. Same place, same time. Good night.